Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this very close to heart and important event for every believer, because we're gathered here today for no other reason but for the commemoration of the Lady of Light, Bibi Fatima, Salamullahi Alayha. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's peace and blessings be upon her and her family, inshaAllah. Today, our wonderful speakers will cover the topic of perseverance in times of difficulty and how we can learn from the trials and challenges faced by Bibi Fatima Alaihissalam. And as we know, she encountered a mountain of them. We'll have a short Q&A session after the two short lectures, so make sure to note down any questions you have. And if you want to open your mic, you can. If you want to use the chat, you can, but there will be a Menti link shared by one of the moderators. If you want to keep your questions anonymous, please use the link and you will not be known. But until then, that won't be the end of the event. We'll have a short Kahoot at the end of the event after the Q&A. So tune into the questions, tune into the content shared by the Shaykhs so that you may be ready for the Kahoot, inshallah. There will be some prizes for the Kahoot, so the better you do, the higher your chances of winning. Now, what better way to start off this event than to recite a Hadith Qissa in honor of Bibi Fatima Salamullahi Alayha, and who a better reciter than our brother Mustafa Salam. Forgive me if I mispronounce the name. Mustafa Salam is a Lebanese Shia Muslim, our brother who resides in Texas, and he is a self-taught reciter who's been practicing for the past 5 years. I assume specifically for this event, but by inshallah, by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is teaching as well. So whenever Brother Mustafa is ready, he may begin Hadith Qissa recitation. And let's recite a loud salawat for him wherever we are. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I was told it was reciting of Quran, not Hadith al-Qissa. I can recite Hadith al-Qissa, but forgive me, if maybe I'm lost.
No, brother. If you want to recite Quran, there is no issues. Quran
Okay.
or Hadith Qissa.
I'm sorry. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وجعلناهم أئمة يهدون بأمرنا وأوحينا إليهم فعل الخيرات وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وكانوا لنا عابدين. ولوطا آتيناه حكما وعلما ونجيناه من القرية التي كانت تعمل الخبائث إنهم كانوا قوم سوء فاسقين. وأدخلناه في رحمتنا إنه من الصالحين. وأدخلناه في رحمتنا إنه من الصالحين. ونوحا إذ نادى من قبل فاستجبنا له فنجيناه وأهله من الكرب العظيم. ونصرناه من القوم الذين كذبوا بآياتنا إنهم كانوا قوم سوء فأغرقناهم أجمعين. إنهم كانوا قوم سوء فأغرقناهم أجمعين. وداود وسليمان إذ يحكمان في الحرث إذ نفشت فيه غنم القوم إذ نفشت فيه غنم القوم وكنا لحكمهم شاهدين. ففهمناها سليمان وكلا آتينا حكما وعلما وسخرنا مع داود الجبال يسبحن والطير وكنا فاعلين. وعلمناه صنعة لبوس لكم لتحصنكم من بأسكم فهل أنتم شاكرون؟ صدق الله العلي العظيم. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على
اللهم صل على
محمد.
محمد وآل محمد.
Ahsan, thank you, Brother Mustafa, for that heart soothing recitation. Inshallah, we get to hear you live one day at your full brilliance, inshallah. Let's transition into our first short lecture where Dr. Mehdi Saeed Hazari will give us an insight as to how we can learn from Bibi Fatima alayhi salam to cope with difficulty and see the light in trying times. Now, before you start, Sheikh, a quick introduction. Sheikh Mehdi Saeed Hazari is a scientist and religious scholar, as well as a teacher and volunteer in the Shia community and the Muslim community at large for almost 2 decades, 20 years. He completed his Hawza studies under the direction of His Eminence Sheikh Muhammad Al-Ali Al-Halabi, and these studies, which have spanned for more than 15 years, include the completion of introductory seminary level subjects, مقدمات, usul al-fiqh, fiqh, Quranic studies, theology, and logic, as well as more advanced instructions in Islamic law. Now, without further ado, let's recite aloud salawat to welcome Shaykh and Dr. Mehdi Saeed Hazari for a short lecture on Bibi Fatima alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Alhamdulillah. Okay. وقل ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي أنزل القرآن الكريم والفرقان الحكيم على النبي الحليم الذي هو على خلق عظيم وجعله الدليل على خير سبيل وكتابا فيه تفصيل وبيان وتحصيل ظاهره أنيق وباطنه عميق لا تحصى عجائبه ولا تبلى غرائبه والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على من أرسل حجة للعالمين وكان نبيا وآدم بين الماء والطين سيدنا ونبينا وشفيعنا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا المصطفى الأمجد والرسول المسدد أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الغرر الميامين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من يوم عداوتهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في محكم كتابه المبين: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا تتنزل عليهم الملائكة ألا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا وابشروا بالجنة التي كنتم توعدون. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. My dear brothers and sisters, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a real privilege and a real honor. And in particular, to be in the company of Dr. Takim, who has shared his valuable time and his wisdom with my community here in North Carolina, which I'm deeply appreciative of. And alhamdulillah, any opportunity to share, I feel is a real blessing for me and something that I feel is beyond what I am deserving of. And more so, I would say, as I mentioned, I think some of you know, and already someone asked whether I am a local. I am actually a local. In fact, my grandmother's home is there. My uncle lives in Scarborough, and it was my summer home on Gilwood Parkway, right near Morningside. So it's actually right on Lake Ontario. It's the most spectacular place where I spent my summers. And although I was born in North York, I consider Scarborough to be my home, truly. So it's particularly nice to be with all of you. And in fact, I feel, although this is virtual, that I'm actually sitting in Scarborough, which is great. I won't take too much of your time so we can all benefit from Dr. Takim, inshallah. And all I wanted to share really is informally about the topic that you are interested in. And really, this is a topic that we all consider to be of great relevance. Why? Because life is challenging, life is difficult. And when we look at the example of Fatima Zahra alayhi salatu wassalam, we see the example of somebody who represented the peak of human performance. Now, you might think that that's a little strange in that I described it in that way, performance, peak performance. Let me explain to you why. A few nights ago, was speaking at an event, and I was mentioning this idea of resilience. The concept of resilience is not a new concept. However, with the topics of sustainability, with the topics of sort of preserving the world in which we live, particularly for those who are more disenfranchised, those who don't have social engagement, as that increases year after year, that we find ourselves in a moment when the United Nations is stressing the importance of sustainability, the importance of leaving behind a world, leaving behind a society, a climate that will sustain life for not only the next few years, but decades and hopefully centuries to come, however long Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us on this earth. That being said, any system that needs to be sustainable has to have resilience inside of it. Resilience means that the system has enough robustness in it that it can preserve itself and continue. Why is that important? So let me give you an example. Let's say it's a real life example that I love to eat pecan pie. All right, I live in the deep south of the United States. We eat a lot of pecan pie. So I eat a lot of pecan pie. I eat it every single day. I eat so much sugar and so much fat and so much saturated fat, oil, whatever you want to call it. I consume lots and lots of salt to get my blood pressure up, that one day I feel chest tightness and pain on my left side. So I go to my cardiologist, and what do? They put me on a treadmill and they run me on that treadmill. And when I run on that treadmill, they're measuring my, basically my echocardiography. As soon as I jump off, they're doing ECGs, and they're looking for disruptions in the signal of my heart to indicate that I'm at risk. And chances are, the only way that they would know that I'm at risk is if my body was withstand stress. So when I do a stress test, when I run on that treadmill, and it reveals in my electrocardiogram that I have some aberrations and some dysfunction, it shows what is hidden beneath, the sickness that is inside of me or that is developing. That does not show unless I stress the system. The same goes for, let's say, engineering, that if an engineer constructs a bridge over a river and does so with a set of plans, they always have to do a stress test on the system. That means that not only does the bridge hold up during times of good weather, no wind, no sort of earthquake, God forbid, but that when the earth does in fact shake, or if there is a hurricane or a typhoon, that it will be able to withstand the stress. If it cannot withstand the stress, then clearly it does not have resilience. The same concept applies to our faith, to what we believe, to the aqa'id, to the tenets of conviction that we hold to be so dear. Why? Because it's easy to believe when you're in a time of ease. It's easy to pray and to worship when everything's good in your life. It's when your life starts to shake, when the boat is rocked, that you then begin to see the true faith that lies inside of an insan. And that's why the Holy Quran says very clearly, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, أَحَسِبَ النَّاسَ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Do the people think that they will be left, that they declare and they claim to be believers, and that the test will not come, the fitna will not come, the trial will not come in front of them? Trial is there. You are going to be tried. And the only way you know you have resilience inside of you is if you can deal with that trial, and that you can come out knowing that you have passed the test. That is the true measure of faith. My dear brothers and sisters, praying, fasting, doing all the ibadat and the wajibat are important. But in all honesty, the main and most critical criteria for determining or knowing a person's faith is, does it hold up during periods of stress? And that is what we see in the legacy of Fatima Zahra. How is that such an amazing thing? And why is it such a great example for us? Because you talk about the one who, when there was no one to support Rasulullah, there were maybe people you could count on one or two hands who truly were there with Rasulullah in the early days. There was one young daughter, Fatima az-Zahra, by her father, who would wipe the entrails and the dirt from his face, or the garbage that had been strewn and thrown upon him, who stood by him in those moments. Our children don't face these sorts of trials. We have not faced these trials in our youth. So we cannot imagine what it means to face that and to see our fathers suffering in this manner, or to see our mothers suffering in this manner. And in that sense, it cultivates in us what I mentioned already is this concept of resilience, and to see year after year the struggle for what is truthful, what is divine, and what is considered to be the message for all time, facing battle after battle, loss after loss, difficulty after difficulty, and you understand why it is that she was so strong, or she had the qualities that allowed her to persevere through these difficult moments. We teach our children, we teach ourselves about the basics of religion. Believe in one Allah, believe in the Quran, believe in the prophets, the Imams, the Day of Judgment. Do your prayers, fast, be good human beings, have the ethics and the morality that are the highest and most lofty available, that are there amongst human beings. Adopt those as your qualities. But in addition, we should consider teaching ourselves and our children how to deal with trial when it comes, how to deal with the stress when it comes. And I am not talking about physical stress. I'm not talking about necessarily the stresses that you face physically in your life. I am talking about those things that test your faith, those things that cause you to shake because your belief isn't firmly rooted. We must cultivate our faith so that it is resilient and impervious to that stress, and that it does not shake out of its roots the minute one sign of difficulty or obstacle comes in front of us. That is the legacy of the Ahl al-Bayt. That is the legacy of the people we follow, that we are living this life, and as we do so, that trial will come inevitably, difficulty will come inevitably, and that we must, as I mentioned in the verse of the Quran that I recited at the beginning, that إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا, those people who declare that Allah is the Lord, and they are upright, they persevere, they do not shake and fall, they do not bend, and they do so in every condition, every circumstance, in every situation. تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ, the angels descend upon them. أَلَّا تَخَافُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَابْشِرُوا بِالْجَنَّةِ الَّتِي كُنْتُمْ تُوعَدُونَ. The angels tell them that don't be afraid, don't be sad, take the good news that Jannah is waiting for you. And that's not to say that we should not be afraid or not be sad. No, these are human emotions that we're going to face. It's to say, don't let it bend you, don't let it break you. Feeling sad and feeling afraid are human qualities that will be with us for the extent of our life. But it should not allow you to become, it should not make you bend. It should not allow you to break and sway off of what you know. I think that begins with recognizing those things that will cause us to shake, meaning the world around us, particularly in a secular environment, recognizing, identifying those things that tend to seep in and creep into our religious practice and create doubt, peer pressure, those sorts of things that are maybe consciously or even unconsciously pushing us. And not only that, but our own preconceived weaknesses and our own sort of doubts about ourselves and where we stand and how we should live. If we can reconcile these things and become wiser about dealing with them, then life becomes a little more straightforward in terms of the path we seek. And that's why we become like Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, who himself, what did he say? لو انكشف عني الغطاء مزددت يقينا, and in some riwayat, imana. If they took the veils from in front of my eyes, I would not increase in certainty or in my faith, based on the report. Why? Because Imam already knew where he was going and what he had. And he saw very clearly. My last statement is, let us ask Allah to open our eyes so that we can see where we are going. Because if we see the farthest target, not the target a year down the road or 2 years down the road, or even 20, 30 years down the road, but the target that lies at the moment when our ruh leaves the body, then insha'Allah, we will be able to pass through this life in the way that we need to. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad ali Muhammad. Shaykh, I don't have a prescript of saying this was a amazing lecture or anything. That kind of left me speechless. Jazakallah khair for sharing that. Truly, resilience is it's a hard thing to practice or withstand in times of trials. So Jazakallah khair. Thanks again for all of that. We will come back to it, inshallah, in the Q&A. But for now, let's go ahead and introduce our second speaker, Dr. or Professor Liaquat Takim. Dr. Liaquat Takim is the Sharjah Chair in Global Islam at McMaster University in Canada. He is a prolific writer and speaker, and the proof of that is that he has authored more than 140 scholarly works, which have been published in various journals, books, and encyclopedia. He's also translated a number of books from Arabic to English. He has written on a wide range of topics such as Reformation in Islam, Quranic exegesis, the role of custom in shaping Islamic law, Islam in the Western diaspora, Islamic fundamentalism, Islamic mystical traditions, Islamophobia, the treatment of women in Islamic law, and many, many, many other topics, which I cannot list because that'll take the whole day. As Shaykh Mehdi stated, and as we can see how lucky we are to be in the presence of Dr. Liaquat Takim. So without further ado and without me taking too much more time, let's recite aloud salawat to welcome him, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين رحمة للعالمين بالقاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين أما بعد السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله. Let me assure you that it is my honor and my pleasure to be presenting in front of all of you, and especially Shaykh Mehdi. As he mentioned, I visited North Carolina in Raleigh. I remember last year, well, before the pandemic began. Unfortunately, if I remember correctly, we did not meet because you were out of town. But we did speak over the phone, if I remember correctly. Yes, unfortunately. But anyway, at least now we can see each other for the first time face to face. Okay, it's when they say very clearly in Arabic that when you have water, you do not need to tayammum. So when the Shaykh has spoken, then I can only be the tayammum. There's no need for doing another wudu. But since I've been asked to speak, I'll share a few thoughts with you regarding the concept of perseverance and Hazrat Fatima Alaihissalam. We often seem to think of Hazrat Fatima as a lady who went through difficulty and who just cried her way out, but that's doing injustice to her. Yes, she went through a lot of oppression and difficulties, but hers was not response was not just of crying. Her response was something which was embedded in Shia Islam until today. It's called the lithic no. No meaning here no to oppression, no to dhulm, no to wrongdoing. In other words, it is better to die in honor than to live under oppression. Indeed, these are the exact words that Imam Hussein himself, having learned them from his mother, depicted them in Karbala over and over again. What we find from Hazrat Fatima Alaihissalam was, first of all, she spoke out in a culture where women did not have a public voice. It was rare for a woman to come in an assembly of men. Yes, women did speak, but in an assembly of men in the mosque, to come up and speak and to chastise the people, the Sahaba, of what they had done was something quite unique. What we learned from her, that having difficulties does not mean that you keep quiet. On the contrary, Fatima Alaihissalam gave a voice to the voiceless. And she taught us something else, very importantly, that you never give in to oppression, never. And therefore, historical works, whether it is from the Ahlus Sunnah or from the Shia, tell us very clearly that she did not speak to those who oppressed her until she died. Even then, they came to see her, but she turned her back from them. She did not speak to them at all. In other words, the lesson here from Hazrat Fatima is this, that you cannot reconcile with oppression, because oppression is wrong, is wrong, is wrong against whoever may be doing it. Indeed, this stance of Hazrat Fatima is evident at different points in Shia history, in Islamic history too, that standing up to oppression is evident not only in Karbala, but also we see it in Kufa, we see it in Sham, we see it in the lives of the Imams who were, most of them, from time to time imprisoned, but they would not give in to oppression. The Quran reminds us that in فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْأُسْرِ يُسْرًا, wherever there is difficulty, there is also ease. It's ma'al usri, not afterwards, not ba'd al-usri. That wherever there is difficulties, there is also ease for you. And you find that ease, that sense of contentment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a very famous hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa alihi. As-sabru miftahul faraj. That sabr is the key to ending difficulties. As-sabr. We tend to think of sabr in a very negative way, by the way. To say merely patience, yes, patience is a part of sabr, but patience can be construed very negatively. Sabr is more than just patience, as I will hope to show you. Most importantly, it is to persevere in difficulties. Why is this concept so important? What Fatima Alaihissalam has taught us is that human suffering is not incidental. There is some divine wisdom in the suffering that all of us go through from time to time in our lives. What it does is to teach us how to negotiate trials. Fatima Alaihissalam was a role model, not only to stand up against oppression, but how to negotiate through trials. Why? Because this going through difficulties and to be perseverant through them is a way of developing the soul. We often talk about tazkiyatun nafs, of purifying the soul. What we don't realize is part of that process of purifying the soul is through go through trials and tribulation. Somebody said it very correctly, that everybody wants to reach to the highest level of the soul, but nobody wants to go through trials and suffering. Well, you can't do that unless the soul is tried. Somebody else said very correctly, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Well, if you don't die, you can't go to heaven, my friends. In other words, in order to get to where we want to, we have to not only go through trials, but negotiate through those difficulties in a proper way. Why are these balas so important? As the Shaykh quoted the verse from the Quran, from Surah Ankabut, that do those who believe think that they will believe without them whom la yuftanun, and they will not be tried? In other words, wherever there is belief, there is some kind of bala or difficulties. Why is this so important? Because when we go through difficulties and when we persevere on the truth, we don't break down. This is an opportunity to unfold our different spiritual qualities. As human beings, my sisters and brothers, we have different spiritual qualities which we need to be unfolded. We go through some spiritual qualities when we pray, for example. We unfold our qualities of closeness to Allah. But there are certain qualities that can be unfolded when we go through difficulties and trials. Which is it? Normally we submit to Allah ritually. Trials and tribulations enable us to submit to Him spiritually, not just ritually. When we have difficulties, we submit to Him spiritually. Remember that dua of Imam Ali Alaihissalam, which we recite on Thursday night. Ya man ismuhu dawa wa dhikruhu shifa, or one whose name is dawa. In other words, just by chanting or remembering name, that is the dawa also. Not the physical dawa, but the spiritual dawa. Wa dhikruhu shifa, and to remember him is also a shifa. So the lesson from Fatima alayhi salam is not only the ritual submission, but more significantly, the spiritual submission. In other words, crying out to Allah from the depth of her heart. Fatima alayhi salam taught me and taught all of us that you find inner strength. And when you get that inner strength, then you get that support and peace with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whatever comes in your way, when you're at peace with yourself, when you're at peace with your Lord, nothing troubles you. As Shaykh Mahdi said very correctly, here was Fatima alayhi salam. Not only, what can be more difficult and more problematic than to see your own father going through the traumas that he went through. And yet she was called Ummu Abiha, the mother of her father. Why? Because she looked after, she tended him when Khadija alayhi salam was no longer there. She looked after her father to the extent that many a time, look at these Qurayshis, these enemies of the Prophet, he would go into sujood near the Kaaba and they would put the intestines of sheep on his back. Intestines of sheep. Who would clean them? It was Fatima alayhi salam. Fatima is the one who told us that no, that a woman's place is not just at home. Remember this much also, this is a lesson for Fatima, that the hijab does not keep you in. The hijab keeps the stranger out. There's a big difference. It doesn't keep you inside you, in your home. It keeps the stranger outside and observe the limits. So she would go to Uhud just to cry for the martyrs. Fatima alayhi salam also taught us that how to reach out to your Lord when in difficulties. We find that she is in deep meditation, in deep spiritual moving prayers, to the extent that the hadith tell us that her limbs would shake when she would pray to her Lord. It's an incredible statement, by the way. And it's in more than just one hadith that when Fatima alayhi salam would pray to her Lord, her limbs would shake. Suffering then, or difficulties, unveils and develops the quality of sabr. If there is no suffering, there is no sabr. That's why we find that in the Quran itself, sabr is mentioned no less than 90 times. 90. There are two key elements in sabr. One is determination, azm, that you will not give in. And the second is not just patience, but most significantly, perseverance. As I said, patience can be seen and construed rather negatively at times. Perseverance means that you will not be moved by anything because you have your strength in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not just patience. You will notice one thing, amazingly, that the Quran uses the term sabr, you know when? Also at the time in battlefield. If we translate sabr as only patient, it can be very negative. But because of that sabr that Allah has given you, in other words, perseverance to stand upright, that you will not run away from battlefield. There are two or different kinds of strength. One is the outward strength, that is to move something, to use your body to move something, the strength of your body. But more significantly and more importantly, there is the inner strength. That inner strength doesn't make you move something, it actually stops you from moving something. It is that inner strength that helps you to stop moving the tongue unnecessarily. It is that inner strength that stops you from just taking revenge, qisas, all the time. It is that inner strength that helps you to become resolute and unmoved. What perseverance does, my sisters and brothers, and I know my time is running short, so I will cut it short, is that perseverance helps you, and this is significant. It helps you align the human will with the divine will. You will notice many people who are terminally ill, they're completely at peace, even though they know that they are going to die soon. They don't go around crying, oh, why me, why me? On the contrary, they say, رِضًا بِقَضَائِهِ وَتَسْلِيمًا لِأَمْرِهِ. I'm pleased with what my Lord has decreed, and I give myself to him. This is what we mean by aligning the human will with the divine will. Remember this much, my sisters and brothers, Allah will not test us beyond our endurance. Not only will Allah will test us, but he will also test us how much we can bear. And he will also test us to see how much we develop the qualities of sabr that he has endowed to us. Wherever there is difficulties, there is sabr. But that sabr, there are qualities within it. And we need to not only have sabr, but more importantly, develop sabr. In other words, to go from sabir to sabur. Sabir is somebody who perseveres, but sabur is one who radiates patience, who radiates perseverance to others, so that when others look at you, they feel that sense, that aroma, if you like, of patience and of complete giving the self to the Lord. That's what they call it, mutasabir, someone who generates patience. My sisters and brothers, we need to have contentment. And that state of rida comes when we align ourselves with the will of Allah, that we persevere on the truth. We don't give up on your principles, come what may. And that generates faith and peace with the divine. And incredibly, Allah is so pleased with these people. You remember that very famous verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, that Allah says, we will most certainly try them with naqsim min amwal wa thamarat, that we will remove that risk, that will remove from them those who love. In other words, people will die in front of us. فَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. The verse doesn't stop there. It says, فَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Give glad tidings to those who do sabr. الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. That is, إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. أُولَٰئِكَ صَلَوَاتٌ مِّن رَبِّهِمْ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُهْتَدُونَ. Those who have that sabr, Allah tells us that Allah will send His salawats to them. It is one of the very few occasions in the Quran. Normally we send salawat to the Prophet. But here the Quran says, Ulaika salawatun min rabbihim. That is the time when Allah will send His salawat to them, His blessings to them. Wa ulaika humul muhtadun. These are the ones who are truly guided. People who are completely perseverant. I want to end now with another verse from the Quran. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ista'inu bis-sabri was-salat. O you who believe, seek patience, seek help with sabr and salat. Because inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. When you do that, when you have that perseverance, that sabr, Allah is with you. This is in the Quran, a verse from the Quran. Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. Fatima then taught us not only that we should pray to God. It's easy to pray. We just go and say Allahu Akbar. But more significantly, how to find peace with God. Because even on her death's time, even when she is about to die, look at Fatima. Huh? This is what we mean by true sabr, true perseverance. What does she tell Rizza? That I want to be alone with my Lord. She knew very well that death was coming. And she says to Fizza, when you don't hear me pray anymore, you should know that I'm gone. So even at the most difficult time in a human being's life, death time, she is alone with her Lord in prayers, the most sensitive time. And the Quran tells us that even the angels will salute such people. Salamun alaykum bima sabartum, fa ni'mal uqbad dar. That the angels, for those who have that patience, the angel will say, Assalamu alaikum. Because of your sabr, you have got the best of positions in heaven. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Jazakallah khair for that insightful, very insightful lecture, Professor Liaquat. It makes one wonder if we should, in fact, ask Allah for more trials so that we can be cleansed and raised in rank, inshallah. And as we transition into our Q&A, maybe that can be the first question, which both of you can shine some light on. Should we ask Allah for more trials? Is that something proper?
We'll let the water answer. I'm the tayammum.
I hardly think that that's the case. Alhamdulillah, we learn from you, Dr. Takim. Alhamdulillah. Thank you. So I'll say this, really with respect to the interesting question. I don't think there is anyone who says that you should ask for trial or tribulation or difficulty. In fact, there is nothing wrong with asking Allah to save you from those trials and those difficulties. However, we want to save ourselves from trials and difficulties that will lead us astray. They say a man who he was walking down the road in the market, and he was repeating the phrase, it is reported he was repeating the phrase, A'udhu billahi min al-fitan. He kept saying, A'udhu billahi min al-fitan. Allah save me from the trials, save me from the trials. And it is reported that Imam as-Sadiq Alaihissalam, he heard him. He said to him, my friend, don't say what you are saying, that Allah save me from the fitan, from the trials. The man says, why, Ibn Rasulillah? Imam as-Sadiq Alaihissalam, he says, because the Holy Quran, it says, إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ, that your wealth and your children are a fitna, they are a trial for you. So don't say that because you're taking refuge in Allah from your wealth and your children. Instead, he says, say, Allahumma a'udhu bika min mudillatil fitan. Oh Allah, save me from those trials that will lead me astray. Trial is a part of life. It's not to say that we ask Allah to put more trial on us. No, it's not. It is a fact of life that we will be tested, whether we ask for it or don't ask for it. The key, I think, is to see which trial is the one that really is needed for us to open our eyes. Because if I am tested in a certain way, it is because I am weak in that area. Whereas somebody else may be tested in a different way because they are not weak in that area. They're weak in a different area. Allah is not going to test you in the areas in which you are strong. He's going to test you in the areas you are weak. And those are the ones that we should be looking towards. I'm not sure I answered the question, but in all honesty, I think it depends on the circumstance and the step forward that we need to take.
Right.
If I can just add, I know all I can say is detour to what Shaykh said. But I would just add that we should not ask for fitna. We should not ask for difficulties. What we should do ask is, Allah, give us the ability to overcome those difficulties or the strength to go through those, because we all have certain amounts of difficulties at various levels or various stages of our lives, whether it's through examinations or whatever, some of us are sick, God forbid, some of us have got other issues, whether it is risk, whatever. So the trials come in different forms. But most importantly is to ask Allah to keep us steadfast and to give us the qualities to undergo through those trials.
Well, perhaps we can say, Allah increase me in the wealth fitna so that we can all have a little more fitna in the wealth side. But that could be less, so I guess no. So we have another question here. It's well, I'll ask one of the questions from the audience at the moment who just asked, how can we build resilience in a Western culture that encourages secularism and faithlessness?
I will let the water talk this time.
You're the water, Shaykh, now. Okay, from what I can say is this: when we came here in the West, there was this idea that we need to assimilate. And I think we have to be very careful. Assimilation is wrong. Assimilation is when you give your values, your culture, your belief system in order to become at one with. We don't need to become at one with the West. There are different levels. There is those who call isolation. I don't believe we should need to isolate ourselves. We don't need to assimilate ourselves. We need to insulate ourselves. Insulation means that we should have enough qualities or enough values which are grounded in Islam, that when we go outside to the outside world, rather than being influenced by it, we should be influencing them in a positive way. So yes, there are issues of secularism, there are issues of faithlessness, but when we have those values, which are very positive values, we are able not only to overcome these are also part of the trials and tribulations, but at the same time, we can show them how to overcome. We become, if you like, uswatul hasana for them, a beautiful model for them.
So if I could add, I absolutely agree. I think Dr. Taqim's answer is spot on, that we don't assimilate. You should know who you are. And so let me, if you permit me, I'll give you a brief sort of
Of
anecdote
course.
that I sometimes use. It's about cognitive dissonance that I'm sure Dr. Taqim knows about better than I do. But cognitive dissonance occurs when you've been practicing something, or you've been told to practice something, and you've been told that you are something, that this is your identity. And then suddenly something shakes it, something questions it, something comes in front of it that makes you question, why are you doing what you're doing? Or why am I what I have been told that I am? One way or the other, religiously, culturally, nationally, etc. And so the social scientists, they say that there is one of four options that most people take. One is that you've been practicing the thing you've been practicing, and now suddenly something comes to shake that. And so let me go back to the example of the pecan pie. That I've been eating pecan pie every day for 10 years, and suddenly I read a article in the Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA, or even the New England Journal of Medicine, that says eating pecan pie is going to increase my risk of metabolic disease and it'll cause me to die early. Seeing this data, I'm a scientist, I have to believe in its validity. I have one of four options. One is I look at the data and I say, this is too serious, and I stop eating pecan pie outright. I say, no, what I was practicing before is not good for me. I'm going to stop. I'm going to choose what is correct, what is right, what is haqq. The second option is to say, well, okay, I need to somewhat, compromise the situation. So what do I do? Instead of eating pecan pie every single day, I'm going to eat it only Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. All right, so instead of 7 days, I've cut it down to 3 days. I'm going to compromise it a little bit. And so that way I get a little bit of the truth of my science benefit, but I also get to indulge in the thing that I like. The third option is to say, well, I'm going to compensate for it. All right, so what am I going to do? I'm going to keep eating pecan pie every single day, but I'm going to make sure that I'm going to jog 5 miles along with it each time. So I eat a slice of pecan pie, I jog 5 miles. The fourth option is to say, forget about the Journal of American Medical Association or New England Journal of Medicine. I don't care what the truth is or the data says or the science says. I love pecan pie. I'm going to eat it every day. Who cares if I die? Human beings are caught in this paradigm in everything we do, especially in a secular world. Now imagine it comes down to something like khums. People don't pay their khums. And so what do? They finally learn that they should have been paying their khums. And so the first group says, well, I haven't been paying it. I should have been doing it. Truth is in front of me. I'm going to pay my khums from now on. The second group will say, no, well, I need to compromise. I'll pay khums this year, but next year, I think I'm going to need the money. So even though my khums date comes, I'm not going to pay it. I'm going to compromise. The third group will compensate. They'll say, Allah told me to give khums, but I think it's just about charity. So instead of giving khums, which for me is going to be $1,000, let me just give sadaqah for $100. Allah is Kareem, he'll accept it. You make a sort of a compensation. And then the fourth group will say, khums, what khums? There's no khums that I need to pay. When we are caught in this spectrum, this dynamic, where we don't know where we stand, who we are, what is our identity, and what is our obligation, that's when we get into trouble. And that's why, like Dr. Taqim very nicely said, we are not here to assimilate. We are here to hold strong to what we believe in. And when we do so, we become uswatan hasana for somebody else. Why? Because we don't compromise based on anything other than what is our religion.
Wow, Jazakallah khair. A very, very in-depth answer. Alhamdulillah. Now we have, I guess, more of a common question, which says, which dua or surah can one recite in times of hardship? Dr. Liaquat, you are muted.
Yeah, I thought it was Sheikh's field, this. There are the various du'as, of course. If you look at the Sahifa Sajjadiyah, there are, of course, the one in the Quran is "Amman yujibul mutharra idha da'a wa yakshifu as-su'." Who is the one who removes the difficulties when when we cry out to him. This is a very common dua that we do recite. But to me, even something like Ya man ismuhu dawa wa dhikruhu shifa, dua kubel, or any dua for that matter. Because after all, what do we do in the dua? We are not only imploring Allah, but we are asking Him to remove our difficulties in whatever form they may be. So in any kind of dua, for me, is also, because as the Prophet says, dua silahul mu'min, that the dua is a weapon for a mu'min. So let us use that weapon in a positive way. But let us also not forget that, that you just do not get through your difficulty by dua only. Dua is just one way, but the dua is a prelude, if you like, of developing that mental and spiritual station to overcome your difficulties.
Sheikh Mahdi, do you want to add anything?
I will just add that for me personally, one of the ayahs that I recite, and there is no sort of riwayah or anything that is related to this, is just me personally that I feel connected to this ayah. The ayah in Surah Al-Qamar, in which it is Nuh Alaihissalam who is saying that Rabbi anni maghlubun fantasir, that, oh my Lord, I am defeated, I have been overcome, you give me the victory. For me personally, I repeat that a lot to myself.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair for both of you. I think both of those are pretty amazing things to follow through with. And I hope that answers the question. We have a question here about reward. It says, what is the reward of the patient or resilient person in the dunya? So, there's a reward in the akhirah, but is there anything in the dunya?
Allah rewards in different ways. And I don't think that we can quantify or specify that this is the reward because of this. The fact that sometimes our bala is removed from us, that in itself is a reward. Or the fact that we are able to emerge through that bala with great strength and a better character and a better person, that is itself a reward, because now we have attained a higher level of spiritual closeness to Allah. To me personally, this is just my view and others may disagree, we should not be talking about reward all the time. We should be looking at, for example, what does it do? In other words, when you do something good, don't say, how much reward am I going to get from Allah? You do good, or you are patient because it's in you as a person to do good. It's within you as a person to emerge strong spiritually. So again, this is very subjective. My personal view always is, you don't pray because I want Jannah or because I want Allah to, to reward me. I pray because Allah is worthy of my prayers. I submit and I bow down to Him because He is the only one who is worthy of my submission. This is my philosophy. So therefore, I don't really look into how much reward I'm going to get by doing this or by that. To me, the fact that I'm doing it lillah, for the sake of praising to my Allah, that's reward enough.
Well, Sheikh Mahdi, do you want to add on? Or
Nothing to add. Wonderful answer. I agree 100%.
Okay, wonderful. So we have, I guess this will be the last question before the Kahoot. Or we have a couple of questions, I guess. But here's the question. How do we bring a God-centric and purpose-oriented approach to life, the way of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt Alaihissalam taught us, without being outcast by loved ones and society and being labeled as extreme?
Oh, this will require like hours to respond to. But
I was going to say the same thing, that is a very big question.
You want to do it, Sheikh? No, please go ahead.
Dr. Takim, please.
I will defer.
Ahead. Please.
I think, given the time constraint, the key word to me is taqwa. Taqwa means to be upright in our lives. In other words, to develop the consciousness, the awareness of Allah's presence at the same time as fulfilling our social and other responsibilities. From performing our duties to our fellow human beings. At the same time, I think that when we are close to Allah, when we have that sense of uprightness, people will appreciate us even more and will look upon us as role model rather than somebody that you turn away from. That when you find so many at time, I have found that I go to a mosque, I have somebody who is very devoutly praying, very, very spiritually connected to Allah. I find I'm attracted to that person because of the quality of spirituality. And I think this is the key to our lives. Our lives become meaningless if we just are ritualists rather than spiritualists. And our lives become meaningless if we live our lives for ourselves rather than for others. I should touch the life of fellow human beings. Otherwise, my life is meaningless.
So I'll just follow Dr. Taqim's thoughts and maybe just say this very simply, that when I think of that question, which again is quite broad and it would require so long to address it fully, how to become truly God-centric and live your life in that manner without causing disruption to your relationships or whatever you are doing, I will say this, that everything in our life is driven by valuation, that why we find ourselves closer to God at moments is because we value God in that moment, maybe more than in a moment of ghafla when we are not paying attention. Or in a moment when I know I need to earn a living, I go work very hard. Why? Because at that moment it is valuable to me. Or that if there is something in front of me that relates to my children are valuable to me. So I give it my full attention and energy. Anything that you assign a value to in your life will become the focus of your attention and your efforts. And if you want to be God-centric, the only way to value him is to give less value to everything else, or at least relative value to other things. That is the great example of Ahl al-Bayt, of our Habib sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, that nothing of the world had any value. Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam's slipper, that he said that it is more valuable to me than the bay'ah and the regards of all these people who are waiting outside to meet me. What a great sentence. And so to become God-centric, we have to value Allah in the way that he is deserving of that value and give everything else its relative or lesser value. And then that way you will see that more attention will go to him.
What a beautiful answer. And we have a last question, might as well take it. And I think it's a pretty short one. We Shias have hadiths about loving Imam Ali alayhi salam, the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, that loving them gets you to Jannah. The only problem is that I feel I commit major sins sometimes. Even so, will I still go to Jannah just for, I guess, purely loving Imam Ali alayhi salam is the question.
First of all, I should make it very clear that I don't believe that I am able to judge anybody's fate. That is only in the hands of Allah. But I can only tell you what the Quran says, because then I feel more on safe ground because I'm quoting the Quran. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Wherever, almost wherever the Quran mentions Iman, there is also good deeds. So there is no such thing in my understanding that just because of my love for the Ahlul Bayt, that in itself will take me to heaven. The Quran says very clearly that we need, yes, the Ahlul Bayt for sure, but we also need to do good deeds. The shafaat of Ahlul Bayt is only when a person has done his or her best, but yet is not quite there. That's when the Ahlul Bayt will carry us. The shafaat will carry us. But for me, just to say, I love Ahlul Bayt, I will cry for them, I will cry for Hussein, and I will show my complete love for Ahlul Bayt. But on the other hand, I will look at all the major sins, God forbid, drinking alcohol, all the other things. That's because if we truly love the Ahlul Bayt, then we should model ourselves on them. What's the point of saying I love the Ahlul Bayt, but then ignore their teachings? I want to end with just one very beautiful hadith from Imam Sadiq, which I find very, very inspiring. When he was asked, Yabna Rasulullah, who are your followers? Because when you're famous, everybody wants to say that they are your followers. Everybody wants to know you. People in Kufa, they will say, we love Imam Sadiq. And somebody comes to Imam Sadiq in Medina and says, people are saying they love you. How do we know who are your true followers? He says, Inna ashaba Ja'farin, man ishtadda war'uhu, wa amila li khaliqihi. The companions of Ja'far are those who are intense in their piety. Not just pious, intensely pious, and when they do something, they do it only for the sake of Allah. He didn't say that you should just love us only. You do something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means that you do serve other human beings and of course maintain that faith.
Jazakallah. Sheikh Mehdi, I don't see you unmuting.
So I would say, only to follow Dr. Takim, that the ayah, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي. The ayah is very clear that if you love God, the fa' that occurs, فَاتَّبِعُونِي, then follow me. It is very clear. It doesn't just say, oh, if you love God, then you're going to enter Jannah. If you love God, then you follow. It's that simple. I don't think there is any more black and white answer to it.
Okay, inshallah. Jazakallah khair to both of you for both, joining us, accepting our invitation, as well as the insightful content and the Q&A that you guys delivered. I myself picked up a lot, so thank you both for that. We will be going to the last part of the event, which is a small Kahoot question quiz, which you guys, if you win, you get some prizes. So stick around. Brother Mehdi is going to be sharing his Kahoot screen, and inshallah we'll get to those questions. Okay, so there's the pin 514-0251. I think I might join as well because I don't know the the answers. While we're at it, I'm just let's recite aloud salawat for our beloved speakers and their health and safety, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We have a name with numbers in it. I assume it means lemons. Mehdi, does your computer have the Kahoot sound as well? We don't really need it. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I can turn that on. 1 second.
Very, very low. Lower. Yeah. Okay, so we have a lot of people. B, not exactly sure what that is. A, spelling the alphabets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 16 people in game and 22 people here. Are we waiting for anyone? Okay, I'll give you guys 1 more minute if you can get in. I'll give you 30 seconds if you can get in. Iman G, welcome. So by the way, even if you're a host or moderator, if you don't know the questions and answers, feel free to participate. Huda, welcome. Okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Any last minutes? No. Okay, I guess we can go ahead and start this. Brother Mehdi, the first question is, okay. What? Oh, sorry. Can we pause this? No, we can't pause at all. I hope everyone knows how we play. So the first question is, when was Bibi Fatima Alaihissalam born? And you basically go to Kahoot.it and you put in the code like you guys did, and you choose the color that's representing the answer. So for the first one, when was Bibi Fatima Salamullah Alaiha born? 20 Jumada al-Thani. Okay. Let's see who the... Wow, okay, very close. All these guys answered very close to each other. Okay, next question. Which of the following are not one of the titles of Bibi Fatima Salamullah alayha? Batul, Abiha, Masaib, al A'imma. Answers are coming in pretty hot. 3, 2, 1. al Masaib. Okay. Fatima still in the lead. Okay, let's go. How old was Bibi Fatima Salamullah alayha when she was martyred? Was she 30? 28. Those are two close numbers. Oh, I only misled one person. She was 18 years old. Okay, let's see if Fatima got overtaken in that list. No, Fatima is racking up points. Okay, the leaderboard didn't change at all, but Huda is coming up. Let's go. Clearly, she's happy. How many children did Bibi Fatima Alaihissalam have? Trick question. Or is it? Let's see. Okay. Most people got this one. I was expecting a 5, but I guess that wasn't there. 4 kids. Okay. Good, good. Muntazar took second place from SF. Not sure who that is, but Huda, you lost your streak. We need to see that streak again. Which surah in the Quran was revealed when Fatima alayhi salam was born in Mecca? Surah Al-Kawthar, Al-Insan, Al-Nisa, or Al-Baqarah? Surah Al-Kawthar. Okay, majority did not get it. Only 7 people out of 20, I guess. 18 people. Fatima is still in the lead. Someone needs to take that lead. Muntazar, I'm placing my bets on you. Let's go. Huda went down one. Iman G coming up. When did Bibi Fatima alayhi salam inherit from her father? Oh, sorry. What did Bibi Fatima alayhi salam inherit from her father? A lot of close answers here. A lot of close answers. Bagh Fadak, the land of Fadak. Okay, I think most people got that. Any changes in the leaderboard? SF is on fire, meaning she is coming back up, but Fatma is still leading this race. Iman G holding her place. Bibi Fatima alayhi salam, Bibi Fatima's descendants are given the honorific title of what? So if you're a descendant of Bibi Fatima alayhi salam, what would be your title? We have many of these people in our communities. Alhamdulillah. Sayyid. Roughly translating to Mr. or Mrs. Fatima on fire? Okay. Well, I guess she's not giving that up. Next question. What does the name Fatimi mean? I guess, is that supposed to be Fatima? Mother of her father, light, lady of light, the shining one, leader of the woman. I assume it means, what does Fatima mean? The shining one, the lady of light, but the shining one. I guess it's more the radiant one. Okay, next, the leaderboard is... Oh, damn, Muntazar came out of nowhere and Fatima was on fire as well. I'm not sure how that happened. I guess it was slow answering. Next question, Huda on fire, but Iman G took over SF as third place. Iman, looking pretty promising. How many questions do we have? 9 out of 10. Okay, very
More
close one.
questions left.
Baby Fatima Alaihissalam left the world how long after the Prophet Alaihissalam? How long was Baby Fatima Alaihissalam alive after the Prophet's passing? Yes, Omar, 2 to 4 months. Controversial. Controversial. Up to 6 months, Omar. Up to 6 months. But yes, this is the closest answer regardless. From 4 to 6 weeks or years to 2 to 4 months. Okay, next question. Almost majority got it. Oh no. I did not expect Fatma to fall all the way to fourth. Iman G and SF second and third respectively. Okay. Muntazar holding on to that first place. Her father gave her a gift which he said was much better than a servant. Um, this is known as. Now, I think the correct or the alternative saying was this is better than the entire world and everything that's in it. Dua, dhikr, qunut, tasbih, Zahra, Salaam Alaiha. Ali Bas really went out of his way to sabotage me. Indeed, I did not. Tasbih Zahra, Salamullah Alaiha. Yes, everybody got it. When Bibi Fatima alayhi salam asked for a servant, her father said, I can't give you a servant, but I can give you something that's better than the whole world and everything in it, known as her tasbih. Okay, so let's see the leaderboard, a final battle. On third place, we have SF. I think it's Sakina Fatima. Okay. Iman G came out of nowhere. Okay. Iman G took over. Huda took over SF. Muntazar. Congratulations, you won whatever you're winning. I think it's an Amazon card, or it might be some other things. So a surprise for your prize. Thank you all for joining. It was a fun event. It was an informative event, and we hope to see you soon in the next one. Follow TMA UTSC at TMA UTSC for all the socials, Instagram, YouTube, to check out this recording later on. Thank you all for joining. That concludes the event. Have a wonderful day.